We might wonder why I would be in Job on Mother's Day for Mother's Day's message, but I think it will come clear here in a little while. First, I want to preface this before we start reading it. This is my personal take on this scripture. It does not have to be yours. It took me a little investigating to finally make everything I wanted to say what I wanted to say. In other words, it was a little confusing at first, but I just had this thought in my mind, there's got to be more to this story than what I'm reading. And so I watched, of course, on the internet, several different preachers speaking on this woman, this mother. And it was so interesting because my Bible here has an exclamation mark. In other words, we shout this thing, we say it loudly. And yet what I found in other translations, especially like King James, it did not have that exclamation mark. And so I think this has been a little confusing. So this is Job 2, 9 through 10. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" So how many of us have heard this story? We've heard about Job's suffering. And then we see that his wife comes to him after he's sitting in a pile of ashes, scraping boils off of his body with broken shards of pottery. And she comes to him and says, "Are you still maintaining your integrity?" In other words, your innocence, your whatever you are, your godliness, your oneness with God. Just curse God and die. I mean, it sounds pretty mean. And yet, if we truly understand where this woman is coming from, this person, this mother, we might get a better understanding of how we, as human beings, are responsible to each other. And so, if we go a little further back in Job, we see why we have so much going on here. Let me find where I want to be here. So we see that Satan came to God with the other angels and spoke directly to God. And God asked him a question. He said, "Satan, where have you been?" And Satan said, "I've been roaming the world. I've been looking over the whole world and just seeing what's going on." And God said to him, "Well, consider my servant Job. Let's get their name right. Consider my servant Job. What a godly guy that guy is my guy." And Satan said, "You know, you have given that guy everything he has ever had. No wonder he serves you. But I bet you, if you take away what you have given him, he will curse you." And God said, "Not my guy, not Job. You can do whatever you want to him, but you cannot harm him. You cannot harm him," Job, personally. So what happens? One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the older brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." And while he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the older brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. And then he fell to the ground and worshipped and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." We cannot even imagine, for the most part, how much he lost. Not only did he lose his stock, his animals, his servants, his sons and daughters, but think what more he lost. He was a rich man. He was well known in his community, throughout his country. He had God's favor, and he knew it. He knew that he was right with God. God called him his man, his son. And yet, he lost almost everything that he had. Everything but his life. Can you imagine? Well, as we read this, we tend to forget that who was standing beside him. I can tell you this right now. Satan didn't attack the right person. He didn't attack them both. He did not attack the wife that was standing beside Job. If he had attacked her first, he would have lost immediately. Because a mother's love is not something he would want to try to deal with. And yet God said he could attack Job, but Satan forgot. Job and his wife had become one in God. The only reason Job got through what he got through was his wife standing beside him. But think of what she lost. She lost her social status. Thank you. She lost her social status also. She lost her power also. She lost her way of providing for her family as well. Food, clothing, money. She lost all of these abilities along with Job. No wonder she was angry. No wonder she was hurt. And then, for her to see him sitting in a pile of ashes, Satan came to God again and said, you know, I've harmed this man in every single way. And God said, that's right. But you still have not caused him to curse me. He still has not sinned. He is willing to take on this abuse and not even know why. When we get sick, when people die, when we become inflicted in whatever way, form, or shape, God allows that to happen. We are being tested by Satan at that very moment. What are we doing with that? We that are fortunate to have somebody stand beside us, like Job's wife, stand beside us and take that on with us. Satan cannot win. But the important lesson here is to remember, what did we bring into this world? Nothing. And what are we taking from this world? Nothing. Except this one thing. These relationships that we're building right here today and out into our families and our community, those relationships that believe in Jesus Christ, that is what we're taking to heaven with us. That one thing. So each one of those relationships deserve this, our full attention and compassion and generosity and encouragement. All of these things combined, love. Every single relationship that we have with somebody in common in Jesus Christ. Because that is the one possession we will take to heaven with us. As Job's wife came to him and she saw her husband in such agony, can you imagine how sorry she felt for him? In her heart, what she had lost. She had lost her children. Her children that she had spent 90 months carrying through her pregnancy. 10 children. But when you put it in a different term, she spent 90 months of her life pregnant, building a relationship with those children in her body before they were born. How intimate could that possibly have been? Men, we do not understand that intimacy that our wives or other mothers have had with their babies before they're even born. We cannot know that. But they do. She lost not only that generation, but she could see in her mind's eye the next generation, the grandbabies, the great-grandbabies, and the greats. The next generations of her family was gone. With that gone, that means she had no legacy left. It was very important for the Jew to leave, I don't know if they were even Jewish, the Israelites to leave a legacy behind them. The next generations to follow. Without that, they had nothing. They had no meaning. What gives us meaning today? What legacy are we leaving behind? That's an important question for us to ponder, to wonder about this week. What is God telling us? This is your legacy. what you're leaving behind on this earth, but not just this earth. This is what you're taking with you to heaven. Not one physical thing will go with us. As she's standing and watching her husband in agony, can you imagine the sorrow and the fear that she is feeling that he will also be taken away from her, and she will be absolutely destitute? She had no young sons to take her into her home. She had no family left. And if he died, she might as well die with him. So when she says to him, are you still claiming your integrity? Are you still claiming the blessing of God? How can you possibly claim the blessing of God with everything that has happened to us? Curse God. And what I found in the Hebrew language, that word curse there was actually bless God. There's two meanings, curse and bless. I choose the word bless. Bless God and ask him if there's no future. If we have no future, why make us continue to suffer? If we are to continue to suffer, show us why. If not, let us die. Let us die. Die to self. Mothers help us to recognize that we do not die to the world. We die to self. In other words, we make a sacrifice inside that we can encourage others. We can bring others to Christ. That's my purpose in this life, is to know God and to bring God to others, to help them know. So as we celebrate Mother's Day, take a mother here that has never really been honored and try to understand her agony at that time. How much in anguish could she possibly have been with everything that she lost? Think about the servants that had all been put to the sword. How many of those had she fed and clothed and bathed and cared for just like her own children? Once we turn the corner on this and we really see what's going on, they weren't just slaves, they weren't just servants, they were totally part of the family, because God had told them, you will take in all servants, you will take in all aliens, you will treat them as your own. And I believe she took that to heart. It's so easy for us to judge without knowing all the facts. Let's not judge until we know the facts. And then we can only judge by how God would judge. And let's remember, we have a just God, we have a merciful God, and he is full of grace. And that is who we are to be. Just, merciful, and graceful. Gracious.